What's up, world? This is E-Cussionist here, tapping in with you. It is our first lesson of the first semester of 2024. I'm here with NGO Radio Terra and friends. We are all over the world casting through the internet, and I thank NGO Radio Terra for having me on board with all the other fantastic educators. We offer free music lessons for all ages, all levels. And this is really exciting because this is the first class of 12. So over the next 12 weeks, we're going to be going over a lot of really key things that have helped me become the drummer that I am today. And I'm consistently growing. And I always say that I'm studying with you just as you are studying with me, because I am a continual and eternal student of the art of drumming. And I believe that people of all ages and all levels can also contribute to my knowledge base as well. So today we're going to be going through some of the basics, the basic grooves that I think you could benefit from learning yourself, and also hearing some examples from me. And I also want to talk about the early beginnings, the humble and early beginnings of the drum set. I think that we got to honor the history so that we can know where we're going, right? So let's begin. So, you know, the drum set is, it's a drum, and all drums come from Africa. All drumming traditions can pretty much be traced back to Africa. And then the invention of the modern American multiple percussion set, or the drum set, can kind of be traced back to, I want to say, earlier than 1916, but in 1916, Ludwig Drum Company came out with the Jazzer Up kit. And it looked something kind of like this, I'm imagining, right? And the way drummers were playing before this and around this time was that there was a lot of other pieces of percussion on the drum set, things I don't have here right now, but if you can imagine where these things were, there was cowbells, there was wood blocks, especially these wood block sounds. Before drummers were playing the early Black American music and early American music, they were probably doing things like playing for comedic bits, playing for tap dancers, doing things in vaudeville, and playing percussion sounds for silent movies. And that's where those wood blocks and those different sounds come in. They largely were playing behind the screen. So I think the drum set's about a little over 100 years old at this point, and it's gone through so many iterations. So how did it go from looking like this, right, to this, to this, to this, and well, let's talk about some of these drummers that helped usher in the new era and the continual genesis of the drum set. The emergence of the drummer as a feature key figure in the band. I think that the early drummers like Baby Dodds, Zutty Singleton, Big Sid Catlett, and Gene Krupa, and Kenny Clark, and Max Roach, these people were at the turning points, the key turning points when the drum set was changing, and they were the ones helping to move it forward and change it. Also, the drum set isn't just a set of drums, it's also a set of cymbals as well. And so the art of cymbal making and cymbals themselves their origin comes from Turkey. And Avedis Zildjian moved his family's business, which started in 1618 or something like that, to Massachusetts to create the Zildjian Company. And they're one of the most popular and largely known cymbal companies in the world. But the art of cymbal making is that old. Goes back to the 1600s. It's an ancient tradition. So the multiple percussion drum set is very much African. It's very much American. It's very much Black American. It's very much Turkish and of the Ottoman Empire. And I guess you could say it's Afro-Asian. there's also a large history of the Irish and their bow drum drumming, right? So we can get as deep as you want to get into the world history of the drum set, but as it pertains to the American trap set, these drummers that I just mentioned, like Zutty Singleton, Baby Dodds, Big Sid Catlett, and the rest of them should be credited. There's also a rich history in playing brushes, right? So these things right here, people started to patent fly swatters, which didn't look like plastic fly swatters like we know today. They looked like these metal whiskers. And, you know, you could kill flies with these, but you could also do things like this. And that was really helpful when it came to accompanying the soft sections of the early traditional jazz that we know, because, you know, people were playing more things like this. With the big emphasis on the bass drum rather than on the ride cymbal. So let's take that same pattern and put it on the brushes. We can see how that could accompany soloists and accompany a singer and accompany a big band and create a versatile texture that drummers could use to not get in the way but still be able to drive the band. It wasn't until the 30s that the drummers started to get a lot of shine. Think of Gene Krupa and Benny Goodman, or Baby Dodds and Benny Goodman, and Sing Sing Sing. I'm playing so much emphasis on the bass drum because that was the driving force of time on the drum set of the multiple percussion set, and that sort of brought the drummer into the limelight. Gene Krupa was probably one of the most popular drummers at the time, and it was because of beats like these that allowed for the drummer to be cast into the forefront. Before that, drummers were doing things like this. They were playing on the cowbells, they were playing on the wood blocks, and those sounds were more subtle and they were more connected to the old school vaudevillian comedy bit routine thing. Once you came to the tom-toms, and once the ride cymbal started to emerge, and you know, we can look at Big Sid Catlett's ride cymbal on top of that heavy 4 in the floor thing, and the emergence of the hi-hat for the new driving force and sound in Black American music and jazz drumming. One thing I want to talk about was that the hi-hat, which is what this instrument is right here, and I've got 2 large crash cymbals as my hi-hat right now. I'm having a lot of fun with that. But usually modern day hi-hats are about this big, about 14 inches. You can get specialized like I did, go really big or go really small, but the standard hi-hat is about 14 inches. They used to be about 10 to 12 inches, and they used to look like this. They used to be called lowboy. Baby Dodds didn't play with the hi-hat, so his thing would have sounded more like... But add the hi-hat, and the cymbal, and the snare, and you've got the recipe for the emergence of bebop and the big band swing era. Drummers came largely from New Orleans and influenced Black American music and the swing era with things like this. It wasn't so much a ride cymbal pattern early on. Let's talk about Baby Dodds, who played press rolls with the bass drum. Other drummers played shorter rolls. But Baby's contribution was a longer, more smooth press roll that ended with each next quarter note. And a quarter note is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that number that I'm counting, that's considered a quarter note. And it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And that was super smooth. And that harkens to the second line beat. Not only was Baby Dodds from New Orleans, where the second line beat comes from, but Sid Catlett was from Louisiana. There's also a connection between Chicago and Louisiana. So we'll get to that in a second when I talk about the Chicago Shuffle. In the early days of drumming in Louisiana, there was something called Congo Square, and the Creole culture and the Black Americans, at the time that slavery was happening, Congo Square was the only place that the Black people of Louisiana and New Orleans particularly could go and celebrate with the drum. And it was there that I believe that also with the Haitian influence, the second line beat was born. And this is what the second line beat sounds like. So this emphasis on that big 4 can also be found in Haitian music. Right? Sounds similar. So we can definitely see how the Haitian and Caribbean influence found its way into Louisiana and New Orleans and mixed with the early traditional Black American music expressions, then later called jazz, where we get this ride pattern from. And people like Baby Dodds and Big Sid Catlett and Zutty Singleton joined up with Louis Armstrong and Jelly Roll Morton, early Earl Father Hines, Kid Ory, and a lot of these original people to create these early jazz sounds. And that was then carried into the future with people like Kenny Clark and Max Roach and Art Blakey and Philly Joe Jones. And we're going to keep on going, right? Let's keep on going then into the 50s, and let's talk about Earl Palmer. Let's talk about Pistol Allen. Let's talk about Jabo Starks and Clyde Stubblefield. And so, we have a lot of really great beats to play. Let me go ahead and play a couple things from the Motown era. And it's really, really important to know that they're all related. So the Motown era, Earl Palmer, who is largely credited with being the most recorded drummer in history, and that might be debatable. I wonder if Bernard Purdie would debate that, but yeah, Earl Palmer. So that's a little slow for a Motown beat, but that's the idea, that 4 on the snare and the on the kick. The swing ride pattern is over here on the hi-hat, and it's not so swinging per se, although it has its own swinging personality, but it's more straight. It's what we would call eighth notes, right? So I talked about the quarter note. 1, 2, 3, 4. Eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. It's the and beats in between those quarter notes that make eighth notes, right? So quarter notes are 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Eighth notes are 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So I'll demonstrate. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay? So I mentioned Pistol Allen and Earl Palmer and some of the Motown stuff, and now let's take it into the classic funk era. We're moving through time, right? We went from the 30s to the 40s to the 50s and the early 60s with Motown, and let's go into the late 60s with something like Funky Drummer. Maybe that's early 70s, but somewhere in that late 60s, early 70s era, we've got James Brown, stuff like this, with Clyde Stubblefield and Jabo Starks. So that's Funky Drummer. That's one of my favorite beats. I believe that the original tempo is a little bit brighter than that. But that right there starts to usher in the 16th note. So it's not just the eighth notes now. And I'll start counting from the quarter note. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Eighth note. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then 16th note is 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. So we're continuously doubling up on the notes, right? It's just like a measuring cup. Quarter, eighth, 16th. And that 16th note is what's driving that funk beat. So again, 1. Here come the 16th notes. So it's super cool because we actually get to start to hear the emergence of hip hop and break beats when we start to think about those early traditional and classic funk breaks, classic funk beats. If you speed that up, you speed a lot of those early Motown and early 60s funk beats up, then we start to get jungle and drum and bass, and we start to get dance music like the Baltimore Club and Philly Club here in the United States. So all that stuff is sampled from this era, this 60s and 70s acoustic funky drumming. The evolution of the drum set keeps going because we get into the 80s and we get the prog rock drummers like Terry Bozzio's kit. Let's revisit this image of this amazing drum set. And then we're going to keep on going with the evolution of the drum set and look at one of my favorite two tools from the Roland Company. And this is the TR-909. And this is the Roland SPDS-X, which is one of my personal favorites, and I use it all the time. And these are really, really amazing because we get to trace people's tastes and how from the 80s into the 90s, drum programming became a thing. And people were no longer hiring as many live acoustic drummers. I mean, they were, but the palette started to change, and pop music and things on the radio started to call for drummers to, instead of playing, started to call for them to program that on the drum pads on the TR-909. So it was with the electronic sounds. And then when it came into the early 2000s, the emergence of the SPDS-X came, and we started playing some of those snare parts with claps and snaps and other creative sounds. And then right now, I think one of the most modern expansions of the American drum set is with the company Sunhouse, who is creating a drum head that you can MIDI map, or that, for those who don't know what MIDI is, it's just how you can translate the strike of a sound on a surface into a computer and create multiple electronic sounds from that. MIDI is a binary code that allows for computer and machine to talk to one another. And that is such an amazing thing, that drums can be a part of this evolution when they're really so ancient. They come from Africa, and they come from the cradle of human existence in the Arab world and in Asia, so among many other places. I talked a little bit about the connection between Louisiana and Chicago, and I think that has a lot to do with migration, and it has to do with the oral traditions of Black American music, and how a lot of people, like particularly Baby Dodds, I believe that he passed away in Chicago. So that leads me to know that he took that information from New Orleans through his whole long, well, I wouldn't say long, but through his whole very deep legacy of a life to Chicago, where we have the Chicago Shuffle. So it can be played within a swing context or a jazz context. And it's part of the blues tradition. It's in a lot of hit records, the early hit records of American R&B. And I'd like to demonstrate it for you. So the Chicago Shuffle. So I'd like to break it down for you. So there's a lot of things that came from the early tradition of swing and the traditional jazz era. Hence, I'm playing 4 on the floor on the bass drum. Some people would just play 1 and 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4. I like playing 4 beats on the bass drum for a shuffle because I think it thickens it up. I'm playing 2 and 4 on the hi-hat, so let me count for you. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. I'm playing the swing ride pattern. And so where the shuffle part comes in is how you play that snare. There's a little ghost note right before the hit on 2 and 4. A ghost note is just a note that's played at a much softer volume than the louder note, the accented note, which is on 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. One thing I do want to make note of is that although I'm playing all 4 beats on this particular beat, I'm not playing it like you would if you were imitating a 1930s drummer, right? In the bebop era, Kenny Clark and Max Roach brought the main driving force of the drum rhythm in that style of drumming from the bass drum, which was to the ride cymbal. And then they played less notes on the bass drum, and they called them dropping bombs, and put that main quarter note feel here. And that made it much easier for soloists to start to be more expansive. And that ushered in the ability for Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and Thelonious Monk and early Miles Davis and even Louis Armstrong in his later days and Benny Carter and Roy Eldridge and all of them to play more expansively. Sonny Rollins as well. So I'm going to go back to the shuffle, and I'm going to feather the bass drum. 1, 2, 3, 4. And another way that we can shuffle is to go ahead and, instead of breaking up the cymbal pattern with quarter note and triplet, so 1, triplet, 2, triplet, 3, triplet, 4, we can go 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3. And now I suppose is a good time to talk about the triplet. We've talked about the quarter note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. The 8th note, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. The 16th note, 1, E, and the 2, E, and the 3, E, and the 4, E, and the 1, E, and the 2, E, and the 3, E, and the 4, E, and the... But we haven't talked about the triplet, which is 3 notes on the count. So if we're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, we go 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1. That's being very demonstrative of all 3 beats, but if we want to make a shuffle out of that, we can just play the first and the last note of that pattern and then loop it so it sounds like this. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4, or we can just count it like this, like a swung 8th note, right? I said 8th notes were straight, but we can also swing an 8th note. So we can go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So let's try and play this on top of this blues shuffle. And I'm going to demonstrate the difference between playing the traditional jazz pattern and this shuffled pattern. Shuffle. So double time, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's lots of different ways that we can shuffle, okay? There's a Texas shuffle. There's the Bernard Purdy shuffle. And we'll get into those. I want to go ahead and show you how we can take this shuffle idea and then we can put that on, let's say, a reggae feel. We can put this in the one drop. Right? So the one drop is an early form of Jamaican groove that came after ska, and we won't get into what ska is today, but we can swing the one drop, and it doesn't always have to be swung, but you can see how my swing feel from the shuffle can get placed on top of this Jamaican rhythm. So the shuffle. Shuffle. Reggae. So as you can see, one of the main things that is different from the shuffle is that the main backbeat is on 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can take that swing and shuffle right hand pattern here, or if you're a lefty, you can take that pattern and put it over on the hi-hat and just put the rim shot and the bass drum together on beat 3, and now you've got a one drop. Right? So let's see, how are we doing on time? Wow, time flies. I think that we've covered a lot of different beats, but I do want to go ahead and recap everything, right? So I'm going to do a little journey through time. Here we go. Early traditional Black American music drumming. Okay? So I did my best to take us from the 20s through the 30s to the 40s to the 50s to the 60s with some classic funk, and then the 60s with what would have been a traditional blues groove of the time, and maybe a little earlier. But then to take that swing pattern over to the reggae, which started to emerge in the late 60s and early 70s. I think that's enough to let you guys digest all these different feels and think about the history of the drum set and its rich history all over the world, and how it coalesced in the South, in the United States, and on the Eastern Seaboard as well, through the inventions of our great Black American and also non-Black American, but it is an invention created by Black Americans and those people. So thank you to them. Thank you to everybody who's been a part of the evolution of the drum set. It takes a global village for that. And this is Ecussionist here with NGO Radio Terra. Hope that you have enjoyed, and we'll see you next week for lesson number 2. Remember, these are free lessons for all levels, all ages. If there's any questions, please feel free to email me. My name on email is Ecussionist. That's ECUSSIONIST@gmail.com. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to my sponsors, Tamboro Drums and Roland Corporation. See you next week.